Hi, welcome to Anime Bar. While Dio falls off a cliff after the fierce battle between him and Jojo, he quickly severs his head off to avoid Jojo's Haeman from reaching there. Fortunately for him, one of his followers named Wang Chan sees him from afar and rushes towards him to save him, and finds his head a new body. Peace is restored to the village, even at the cost of several lives. Robert destroys the stone mask. After some time, Jojo marries Arena. They both decided to go to America for their honeymoon. Before their departure, Robert scurries out to bid them farewell. Some men are seen carrying an unusual coffin into the ship. Finally, Jojo and Arena depart. During dinner in the ship, Jojo sees Wang Chan and instantly figures that Dio is still alive. He goes after him. Wang Chan had already brought out Dio's head. Dio plans to take over Jojo's body. Dio shoots out a beam from his eyes, which pierces Jojo's neck and seizes his breathing, rendering him unable to use his Haeman. Arena finds them. During the battle, Dio unleashes his zombie army who attack the ship occupants. In the process of their ravage, the zombies murders a mother who protects her son. The battle begins with full force. Dio warns Wang Chan of Jojo's high skills in battle. Jojo manages to use the last Haeman in him to disturb Wang Chan's body system, which makes him cling tightly onto a paddle shaft. Dio panics because this shaft can increase the pressure in the piston and cause the ship to explode. Arena wails bitterly as she decides to die alongside Jojo. But Jojo stops her and tells her to save the baby. The mother died protecting and flee. Dio resorts to take Jojo's body by force, but unfortunately, Jojo refuses to be taken down so easily. He stabs Dio and holds him in his arms. The ship explodes and kills both of them, while Arena escapes with the baby in the coffin. It is revealed that she is pregnant. She floats to the Canary Island where she is rescued. On February the 7th, 1889, Jonathan Joestar. Jojo died alongside Dio. 50 years after Jonathan's death, Robert has built a good oil empire for himself. Strizo had succeeded Master Tonpetty. The two both fly to Mexico to see what Robert's mining team discovered. Robert takes them to a cave where they see numerous stone masks attached to a pillar alongside a stone man. In New York 1938, a boy named Smokey snatches an Englishman's wallet. He is caught and brutalized by two police officers before the Englishman rescues Smokey using Haeman. The boy introduces himself to the Englishman. The Englishman appears to be the grandson of Jonathan Joestar. His name is Joseph Joestar, also taking the nickname Jojo. His parents died in the war, leaving him in the care of his grandma, Arena. Back in the cave, it is discovered that the stone man is actually alive. Strizo then reminds Robert about how Jojo awakened his Haeman and used it to save Robert and his crew from the plane hijack. Strizo then kills Robert's crew and tells Robert how he had secretly admired Dio's immortality and plans to use the mask to gain immortality himself. Then he uses one of the stone masks to transform into a vampire, thereby restoring his age. Arena, Smokey, and Jojo go to a restaurant to have dinner. A man makes a bad remark concerning them. Jojo beats him up. From the battle, it seems Jojo has the ability to predict his opponent's moves. After beating up the man's master, a mafia, apologizes for the misconduct and delivers the apparent news of Mr. Robert's death caused by a monk, who Jojo identifies as Strizo from his description. Jojo beats the man up for ruining Arena's mood. Later, Smokey and Jojo are seen in a cafe when Jojo notices a strange-looking man outside. He then moves out and confronts the man. He figures that he is Strizo. He pulls out the Tommy gun and starts firing furiously at him. Jojo already figures that Strizo is already a vampire. A full-fledged battle unfolds between them. Jojo manages to deceive him with a mirror as he shoots laser from his eyes. Strizo, who possesses higher knowledge of Haeman, gives him a little bit advantage over Jojo. But Jojo manages to blow his body to bits with a grenade. Unfortunately, the victory is short-lived. As Strizo body parts fuse back together, Jojo and Smokey run away to the bridge. Unfortunately, Strizo catches up in no time with a female hostage. He pulls out a tooth from the lady to show he is serious. This act annoys Jojo and he starts to fight him. He eventually conquers him. As Strizo is about to fall off the bridge, Jojo saves him. At that moment, Strizo tells him about the Pillar Man and how he drew the blood energy from the victims he killed. He disintegrates himself with the Haeman he built inside him. The narrator informs us that the World War began in 1938 with full force. The German army does everything in their power to win. The Major General of the German army, Major von Storheim, is seen punishing a maid for injuring him during shaving, when a soldier informs him that Robert has woken up. Jojo apologizes to the girl, and then plans to go to Mexico in search of the Pillar Man. It appears the German army had retrieved and treated Robert while extracting information from him concerning the Pillar Man using the truth serum. Major Stroheim grabs one of his captives and uses his blood to awaken the Pillar Man. Meanwhile, Jojo embarks on his journey to Mexico, but a man keeps trailing him. Jojo realizes that he is being followed and then decides to face the man. The man appears to be from the German army, and he followed Jojo in order to gather information about Strizo. He introduced himself as Donabang, a knife specialist. Jojo defeats him with the help of his Hammond. The experiment with the Pillar Man continues. They manage to awaken him, and the Major Stroheim names him San Viento. They release a zombie into his cell, and they notice he absorbs it with his life force. Meanwhile, Jojo finally discovers the secret facility where Robert is, and he infiltrates it. San Viento escapes without anybody knowing. They discovered that he disfigured his skeletal system to escape through the ventilation ducts from the surveillance tape. Soon San Viento gains entry into the lab and takes over the body of a soldier. They shoot rapidly at him, but he absorbs the bullets and shoots them back at them with the tip of his fingers. By this time, Jojo had already infiltrated, so he uses the hair of Major von Stroheim to form a Hammond shield against the bullet. It is discovered that San Viento is actually primitive, but with high IQ. Jojo taunts him with no intention of fighting him, but San Viento snubs him and moves on to pick a gun. He learns how to dismantle it in a second, something that takes several months of preparation for a soldier to do. Irritated by his snobbish behavior, Jojo approaches him to force a reply, but San Viento uses his ribcage to attack Jojo. Jojo uses his Hammond to protect himself. This feat catches the attention of San Viento, as he observes that Jojo isn't a normal being. He goes to where Robert is and searches his memories, and finds out that Jojo truly isn't like every other human. Fighting breaks out between these two. During the battle, San Viento tries to absorb Jojo, but his Hammond protects him. As soon as San Viento figures that Jojo draws his Hammond energy from his breathing pattern, he kicks him in a critical point that knocks him unconscious and disrupts his breathing, which makes him vulnerable. San Viento begins to absorb Jojo, but Jojo regains consciousness. He says this is part of his plan, but then uses his Hammond to blow up San Viento. The plan works and San Viento is blown all over the place. But San Viento doesn't die. Major von Stroheim reveals his weakness as the sun, just like a normal vampire. Jojo begins to drag him outside, but San Viento resists fiercely by using his flesh to slow down Jojo. Major Stroheim comes to his aid and opens the door, but San Viento traps his leg too. The Major yells at Jojo to cut off his leg so he can open the door. Jojo does cut it off, enabling Major Stroheim to open the door. The sunlight begins to turn San Viento into a statue, but he quickly dislocates his own body and enters Major Stroheim's body through his wound and hides. The Major decides to blow up his body with an explosion, but before he dies so, he tells Jojo of the existence of another Pillar Man in Europe, and the aim of the experiment was to find other weaknesses other than the sun. He tells him to go to Rome as Robert knows who to meet there. The Major blows himself up and San Viento is revealed. He begins to turn into statue, and then he runs towards a well to hide from the sun. Jojo prevents him and uses the well water reflection to his advantage, as he makes sure San Viento turns into a statue before he touches the water. Robert builds a structure, named the Speedwagon Foundation, which serves as an abode for science, but also a cover for the discreet experiments on other Pillar Men. It is discovered that San Viento, in his statue form, still absorbs life force, but UV rays help keep him a statue. In the cave where San Viento was discovered, 3 stone masks differentiate from each other by the horns. They were found arranged in a vertical position, with San Viento being the lowest. They intend to seek help from the Baron's grandson, Caesar Zeppeli. Caesar and Jojo are quite opposite in nature, as Caesar seems well-mannered and more of a gentleman than Jojo. He expresses his surprise at Jojo's battle with San Viento. Despite his weak Hammond and battle inexperience, Caesar also revealed his special Hammond bobble technique to intimidate Jojo. Later that night, a German soldier named Mark comes to pick them up and takes them to where the newly discovered pillar is. Before they arrive there, one of the 3 Pillar Men named Wamo awakens and murders the soldiers, before awakening the remaining 2, Kars and Isidici, who he referred to as masters. Caesar, Jojo, Robert and Mark discovers the massacre. While still in shock, they encounter the 3 Pillar Men. One of them bumps into Mark, cutting off half his face away in the process. The Pillar Men don't even seem to care about them as they walk away. The Pillar Men intend to find the red stone of Aja to make them immune to the sun. It is also discovered that Wamo reflexively attacks anyone who steps on his shadow. Mark begs for death as he cries in pain. Caesar grants him his desire and rage engulfs him as he decides to go after the Pillar Men to get his revenge. Caesar goes after Wamo. He launches his Hammond bubble technique. Upon realizing that they are Hammond bubbles, Wamo simply uses the wire of his air to create wind that bursts all the bubbles. The Pillar Men are surprised to see Hammond users still existing. Wamo strikes Caesar's throat, rendering him unable to breathe, thereby making him unable to use Hammond. As they proceed to leave, Jojo steps into the fight. He introduces his new technique, Clocker Balls, to introduce Hammond. Wamo evades all of his attacks with amazing speed. He then cuts Jojo's wrist open, giving him 1 minute to fight him before Jojo goes unconscious from the blood loss. During the battle, Jojo manages to scratch Wamo's face in the process. Wamo allows Jojo to beat him as punishment for allowing a human to even scratch him. After a while, Wamo uses a special technique that rotates his arm in different directions and defeats Jojo in no time. Jojo feigns death as he leaps towards a minecraft and lures Wamo there, driving them away from Robert and Caesar so they can escape. Unfortunately for Jojo, Wamo reads through his plan to use an explosive to eliminate him. As Wamo is about to finish him off, Jojo plays on his ego and uses it against him. He tells Wamo to give him a month to prepare so they can both fight a fair fight. After much manipulation from Jojo, Wamo finally succumbs but puts a poisoning ring around Jojo's aorta that dissolves completely in 33 days. If it dissolves completely, Jojo will be killed, and if he tries to remove it surgically, he will also be killed. The antidote to the poison lies in Wamo's lip ring. Isidice shows interest and also puts a ring in Jojo's windpipe. Isidice asks Cars if he has interest, but Cars declines politely. This brave act changes Caesar's minds toward Jojo. Caesar and Jojo traveled to Venice to meet Caesar's trainer and train in order to be prepared for the battle in 1 month. Before they meet up with a coach, Caesar teaches Jojo a Hammond control trick using an inverted cup of water. They meet Caesar's trainer, and she makes quite an entrance. Yes, she is a woman. Her name is Lisa. Caesar explains that the history of how she learned Hammond remains anonymous. Lisa makes some observation in her little duel with Jojo. She inserts a breathing correction mask on Jojo that suffocates him if he doesn't control his breathing. The training finally begins. Lisa takes them to an isolated island where she lives and will also serve as their training ground. Meanwhile, back home, Robert assures Irina that Jojo is safe. The training begins with the Hell Climb Pillar, a training that has claimed the life of many. The pillar is 24-meter pillar with oil flowing down on it. The task is to use Hammond to climb back up. The training begins. Caesar is the first one to make a progress because of his base knowledge of Hammond control. Jojo tries to cheat using a rope, but Lisa cuts it and warns him that only Hammond is allowed. Jojo picks up some clues from the Hammond control trick Caesar taught him earlier with the inverted cup. He begins to climb. After 2 days, they are almost at the top when Jojo sees a crack and sees it as an opportunity to rear his fingers. Unfortunately, it is a reel that sends out high-pressure oil spray at the 20-meter mark. Caesar manages to cut through using his repelling Hammond energy, something Jojo has no knowledge of. But Jojo uses Hammond to slide across the oil spray and jumps onto a nearby wall. He loses his strength and is about to fall before Caesar saves him. After 2.5 days, they finally reach the top. Lisa is impressed by Jojo's creativity. Lisa introduces her finest 2 servants, Machina and Logs, who takes them to the next series of intense training till 7 days before the poison ring dissolves completely.